Wow, Yenzi, our guest today brought back some memories. I mean, to be 21 again and doing your first Grand Tour, what a cool way of hearing his experience through his words this last couple 45 minutes or so. What do you think?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And he did a pretty good first Grand Tour. So he leaves us back being basically hungry for more. I mean, he had some good results. He showed the potential. So I guess he is one that will come across our screen for the future.
Yeah, the one thing that's just so hard because we are from that old school is, do these riders feel that they're obligated to do a Grand Tour so early because of riders like Tadej and Remco and Juan Ayuso coming out of the woodwork, or is it something that they want to do? But our guest today, Matthew Riccitello, says that he not only earned his spot, but wanted to do his first ever Grand Tour this year in the Tour of Italy. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with Matthew Riccitello of Israel Premier Tech. All right, welcome Matthew Riccitello to Bobby and Jens.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, man, great to have you on, number one. Number two, hope to see you again at the L Tour of Tucson this November. But yeah, a lot has happened since the last time we saw you in Tucson. Heard you did one of those Grand Tour thingies. How'd that go for you?
Yeah, it was good. A bit of a definitely. It wasn't the plan going into the year to do a Grand Tour. I think the plan was to not do a Grand Tour this year and plan on it next year. And yeah, I guess as the races went on, it kind of looked more and more likely that maybe doing the Giro would be a benefit to me, and like just getting a Grand Tour in the legs and getting the experience. And so yeah, I think the first time the directors brought it up with me I was in Catalonia, and they said maybe, let's think about it, but maybe doing the Giro would be a good idea. And we talked it over, and I wanted to do it, and the team agreed that it would be beneficial, they thought. And so yeah, just it ended up being a really good experience. A lot of rain, but it was still a really good experience.
So I totally agree that it was a good decision to do it. One Grand Tour per year. It definitely you will benefit from that in the next year. But how did it come to that point? Your season were just better and stronger than you thought, or you had a shortage of riders, they would be healthy or fit enough for the Giro? Or how did that situation occur? I mean, to our viewers, doing a Grand Tour is not something you decide on a Friday afternoon that you be or start on Sunday. I mean, it's a major adventure. You spend 3 weeks, day by day, racing one of the hardest mountain stages. So how did you get there?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I think we had some guys that were planning to do the Giro at the beginning of the year that, for whatever reason, I think that between sickness and injuries, like you guys know, is pretty common. And so maybe some spots opened up. And also, I think my progression during the year and how I was doing in these races, the team thought, as opposed to going to the race and getting completely destroyed and coming out of it tired and fatigued and not wanting to race for a while, they thought I would come out of it in a better place and as a better bike rider, and I thought the same. And so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't an easy decision to decide to kind of change the program a bit and do the Giro. Yeah, involved quite a bit of talk with my coach and the directors about, yeah, if we thought it was a good idea for those reasons. It's not something you just do normally, so without having it planned earlier. So it ended up being what we thought it would, and that it was a positive experience, and I felt like I came out of it a much better cyclist. So,
well, let me tell you, Jens and I back in the day, we didn't have to think about doing a Grand Tour at the ripe old age of 21 or younger because it just wasn't in the cards, right? Cycling is very much a do what we've always done, never put a young guy in the Tour. But now with the young names of Remco and Tade and Juan Ayuso and yourself, it just seems like, hey, they can do it. Let's see what happens, sort of thing. So you didn't really have much to go on. I'm sure you had a lot of teammates and directors and concierge people telling you what to expect. But what were let's start with the valleys. What were the challenges as well as the peaks, the successes that you pulled out of your first ever Grand Tour?
Yeah, look, the biggest challenge for me at this race in particular was sickness. I think it was hard. A lot of the Peloton was sick. Just, I don't know what it was. I think maybe the weather, the time of year, the combination made it a lot of guys were sick. And I got sick like 2 times throughout the whole race. Once, I think after the Napoli stage was maybe stage 6. I think that was the first time I was sick and got over it. I felt like pretty quick. I think 2 or 3 days and I felt good again. And then, I don't know, maybe midway through the second week, I started to feel sick again. And so I felt like a lot of the race was just waiting until I felt better. I was never sick enough to want to stop. I always thought I could keep going. And in the back of, I always thought, I would get better in the last week. And so that's kind of what kept me going. But for sure, that was the biggest challenge for me. But apart from that, I mean, it went pretty smoothly. Like it went pretty well. Yeah.
So what were some of the peaks then? Because I saw that you were climbing super well in maybe right before you got sick the first time. And then you started climbing good again. And then maybe that coincided with getting sick the second time. But yeah, tell us a little bit about those peaks of that 3-week grueling race with terrible weather.
Like you said, the first, I think it was stage 4. It was the first time we finished. It was a more selective finish than had been up until that point. And I think there was a break up the road, I think, and I was 12th on the stage, but maybe, I don't know where I was in the GC group, but it was a sprint out of the climbers kind of. And yeah, finishing 12th on that stage, that was probably the peak actually of because after that, you get a bit of confidence, like, all right, like I can climb with these guys. We still had Pozzovivo at the time and he was going well. So after that stage, I really thought, like, I have the legs to be with the front group on these stages, and Pozzovivo's going well, and so if I can just stay around him and support him as best I can on these harder days, then maybe even I can finish in a decent place in the general classification. And things changed a bit later in the race, and Pozzovivo left COVID, and we had to change kind of what the strategy was. But I'd say that was the first, that was a good point in the race. And then, I mean, then the last stage, the last time trial, I kind of started to feel like myself again in those last 3 or 4 days of the race. And I knew that last time trial suited me pretty well. And if I felt decent, that I would be able to do well. And I woke up that morning feeling pretty good. And so, yeah, I was just excited to start and do the time trial. And yeah, that was a highlight for sure.
So now that you felt good and you were close with the GC riders on that first sprint, then you got sick twice, feeling better on a second last day. Looking at that possibility, if you were be healthy all the time, what is in your wildest dreams? Where do you think you could go in the next Grand Tours you're probably gonna do? Top 10 maybe? Top 5? Or you go, nah, it's too far away, I do not think about that?
Yeah, for sure. The goal has always been to be a GC rider. So I think doing a Grand Tour and doing those 3 weeks and staying healthy, that's part of it. So yeah, I don't know. I can't say the next Grand Tour I'm going to be top 5, but for sure I'd like the next Grand Tour I do to race, for the overall and just try and stay healthy the 3 weeks and be consistent. And I think for sure in the future, I don't know about the next Grand Tour, but in the future I can finish top 10, top 5 in a Grand Tour. I think I've always felt like I've been able to recover really well in stage races, and even in the Giro I felt the same. I mean, without getting sick even, I just feel like I almost feel like I get better as a race goes on, which I don't know why that is, but I think it's a good characteristic to have if I want to be racing with the top guys in the Grand Tours. I mean, they're all so good now, so.
Yeah, resiliency, I think, is one of the top building blocks of an overall GC contender for sure. But I'm glad that you mentioned something about stage 20, that last time trial, because, you know, you only finished less than 2 minutes behind Primoz Roglic, who not only won the stage, but then he won the overall as well. And you had time in the new fan favorite hot seat. I have a funny story to interject, but first of all, I just want to hear about what it felt like to be in that hot seat in a Grand Tour. Must have been a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. It was a good experience. It was a weird one because the way this time trial was, the road was so narrow and so steep. There were no cars, and so they had to do waves. And so I was in, I think, the first or second wave, and towards the end of that wave, and I finished and was in the hot seat. And then you have to wait like 45 minutes between waves to get all the motos down the mountain so they could start the next wave. So it was a really cool experience, and I was glad that the following day was Rome and not the stage that I had to worry about or focus on, because I was just sitting. I mean, those 45 minutes you're sitting there, you can't really do anything. You can't even watch the race because there's no race going on. So it was just me and Alexis, my Swanee. We were just hanging out up there enjoying it. I mean, it was good. It gave me time to take it all in. So,
well, my funny story was when you posted that time, I think at that time it was like 2 or 3 minutes better than second place, maybe 2 minutes. And I texted your dad and I said, wow, that was, he ripped that one. And, you know, I assumed that he was there because I thought he was following you around. And he said that he was following the race around, but then decided to go back to your apartment in Nice, France, because it was just too hard logistically to get around the time trial. And he said that you texted him back saying something like, no worries, you can watch me in the hot seat from the apartment in Nice. Is that true? Did you actually say that to him? Because that's pretty cool if he said that and then came through with it.
Yeah, it's true. I was pretty. I wouldn't have said that to the media or to the general public, just because it sounds pretty cocky. But you know how it is with your family and close friends.
Pops
tend to be a bit more. Yeah, you say things that maybe you wouldn't say in front of everybody else. But yeah, I was pretty confident before. I knew, like I said, I woke up, I felt good, I felt healthy. I knew the time trial, I mean, it was 15%, I think, for 5K, and I knew I had good legs, and there's not much I knew I would do a decent time, and I thought I would be, looking at the guys who went before me, I thought I would be in the hot seat, and yeah, I just was having a bit of fun with him and trying to make him not feel too bad for missing the TT. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
So just because I'm curious, what was the smallest gear you used on that TT, and how did you experience that bike change? There were lots of talking before it, and apparently teams have practiced that on a parking lot. So smallest gear you used, and how did you experience that bike change on that TT?
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't do too much. I mean, we definitely did not do as much like prep and research into this TT as like Jumbo and UAE, but fair enough. I mean, it's not like we weren't riding for the pink jersey, so I could not tell you the gear I think I can guess. I think it was a 38 in the front and a 36 in the back, but I could be wrong. But whatever it was enough. I never felt like I needed an easier gear, so that was good. And the bike change the same. We just we didn't practice it at all beforehand, and just did some like kind of verbal instruction between the person who was going to be there standing with the bike and me, and it went really smoothly. I thought I had no problems, and it's a lot of variables, like you don't just with the bike change, and even like having a bike computer on one bike and like switching. It's a lot of variables, and in my head I remember being on the time trial bike and just the whole time just being like excited to get onto the road bike and start going uphill, because I knew after that the only thing you had to worry about was going hard, and you didn't have to worry about fussing around with the bike change. But yeah, I mean, it all went really smoothly and no issues. So
I mean, that's a new part of the sport. That Yenzi, did you ever have to do a bike change in a time trial? I know you raced a lot longer than I did, but I don't think I ever had that or even thought about that, or there was a course that even questioned that.
I did one in Tour of Poland. We had an uphill time trial and went really steep in the end. So I did a one bike change. But yeah, in my entire career, this one race.
Well, you know, what was also cool for that last time trial, Matthew, was that you had Sepp Kuss and Brendan McNulty, who did great rides as well. 3 riders in the top 11, you know, gave us a lot to cheer for back here in the USA. You know, Sepp is 28, Brendan is 25. So they have a heck of a lot of experience, to say the least. What is your relationship with those two guys in particular? Because they're both great climbers. They both came up young and are now on iconic, huge teams. Do you look up to them, and what sort of relationship do you have with those two guys in the Peloton?
Yeah, for sure. I look up to them. I mean, they're both of them. I've been watching since since I started cycling. They're both super great guys too. Like in the Giro, you know, sometimes you can find time to go talk to guys in the Peloton, and Brandon and Sepp are both guys that I talk to. I don't know, I wouldn't say a lot, but more than anybody else. And they're two guys that I really genuinely enjoy talking to, just because of how cool they both are. And yeah, he's also from Arizona. I mean, I'm from Tucson, he's from Phoenix, so a couple hours drive apart. But it was cool to see like the Americans in that race, especially doing so well, and yeah, having guys to talk to like that. I mean, I talked to Sepp a bit about, he was just giving me advice on, or comparing kind of my first Grand Tour to his first Grand Tour, and just giving some words of encouragement. And it's just, they're both super good guys, and it's more fun to watch those guys doing well when you know they're really good guys.
So you live in Nice, correct, or around Nice?
Yeah, in Villefranche-sur-Mer. So it's like,
how come then you don't live with all the other English-speaking professionals in Girona? I mean, it looks like that half of the peloton lives there. How did you end up over there and not with all the other English-speaking bike professionals?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was in Girona my first 2 years in Europe, so I was there, as a 19-year-old and 20-year-old, I guess, and with when I was on Action, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. Just in my head, I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna do my whole career here in Girona. For me, it was too much, almost too much cycling, and too much like you said, the whole Peloton's there. So I'd go to a race and get back to Girona, and like you feel like you're still at a race in the Peloton. Like there's good things and bad things about that. Like, it was a really easy place to go initially, just because you know a lot of people there, a lot of English speakers, a lot of people to ride with, and to ask questions about the place. And but yeah, once you sort of figure it out, it's like I was kind of tired of going out for a ride, and like you kind of just want to do your own thing sometimes, and you run into people. And I mean, I'm a friendly person, so I feel like I have to talk with everybody. And I'd been to Nice a few times before turning professional, like as a junior, and I really liked the riding. And in the back of my head, I kind of always knew that at some point I would end up there. And it's a perfect place because there's a good group of Americans. The airport's really close to where I live, and so there's still people to ride with, and everyone's not living on top of each other. So there's a little bit of separation apart from cycling, and I like that. I like that about Nice. I know a little bit of French too. I took French for, I guess, 3.5 years in high school. So I'm not fluent, but I'm working on it.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, because that's where I was based my whole career, and I have to agree with you 100%. But, you know, there are still a lot of professional riders on the Côte d'Azur, you know, in Monaco, Villefranche, Nice, Cannes, you know, the whole 9 yards. Who is your, like, kind of, what's your training group like there? Do you like to ride by yourself, or do you normally try to get a crew together?
Yeah, most of the time I train by myself, and to be honest, I haven't spent a ton of time in Nice this year, just because I've been at either a race or a training camp for most of the season. But so I think the most time I've spent in Nice is like 2 or 3 weeks at one time. But yeah, I've found time to go out and ride with some of the other Americans, and also non-Americans around, like Larry Warbass and Nilsson Paulus, Dombrowski, Davide Formolo, I know a little bit, and he's a super fun guy to ride with. He lives in Monaco. Yeah, there's a good group of guys to ride with when you want to ride with somebody.
We'll be back after this short break.
Now back to our chat with Matthew.
And all these training camps, we hear all the time from every rider we're interviewing. It seems to be that's the way it is in these days to be ready for a race. We never had that many training camps, or basically not really any, right, Bobby? We had the big January training camp, and then he just left us alone back home. Do you think that's a good idea to be always in training camps? I mean, obviously it helps you guys. You race so much faster than we did in our generation. But sometimes I wonder, like, I don't think my head would be made for that, to go from a race and then more or less have 2 days at home and straight back to a training camp. How do you deal with, like, living out of a suitcase for such a long time of the year?
Yeah, I actually like it. I mean, I think it's different for someone like me, like, coming from the US. Like, I have an apartment in Nice or in Villefranche, but it's still not home. So it's like you feel like you're away from home anyway. And going to these training camps and having the support of the team and being able to ride with your teammates, and, you know, having everything taken care of, like food and a follow car for the training, it makes the training easier. You're able to train harder, I think. And for me, yeah, I mean, it's different, I think, for the Europeans. Like, I hear some of my teammates, and, oh man, I've been away from home for 2 weeks. I don't know if I can do another week, two on top of this. Like, and in my head, I'm thinking, like, it's May, and I've been away from home since January. So yeah, it's not like I enjoy going to the training camps, but I can see why someone whose family is in Europe and who can take a 2-hour flight and go home would not want to come to a training camp straight after a race, and would rather go home. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's I mean, we're asking this question to a 21-year-old kid, Yenzi. You know, like, you know, when you have 3, 4, 5, in your case, 6 kids at home, I think it gets a little bit more difficult. But Matthew, listen, you're a super young and super gifted climber, and you've been in Europe, when you were younger, and now with Israel Premier Tech, you're getting to do some of the most iconic climbs that exist on the planet. At your young age, which is your favorite climb in Europe, or do you have one?
Yeah, I'd say Alpe d'Huez. I've never raced up it, but I've climbed it a couple times, quite a bit, just because actually the first time I went to Europe to ride was, I think I was 15, but my dad every year does a camp just with close friends or friends of friends. He kind of organizes it, and it's right by Alpe d'Huez. It's actually in a little village called Villard Reculas, which if you go up to Huez on out, which is maybe halfway up Alpe d'Huez, and then go left across this balcony road, it's this little village right there. And so that was kind of my first experience riding in Europe. And yeah, I'd say Alpe d'Huez is my favorite climb in Europe. I haven't raced up it yet, but I hope I get to at some point in the near future.
And what about least favorite climb? Do you have a least favorite climb so far?
I kind of like all the climbs we do in the races. I don't know. I don't know if I could say I have a least favorite.
Have you climbed? Well, you've climbed Von 2 before. I'm trying to prod you towards that one because that's the one that I absolutely hate. I mean, it's gorgeous, it's iconic, but every time I went up it, it was nightmarish conditions or performance by myself. But Yenzi, what about you? Do you have a favorite and a least favorite climb? I mean, you raced in the Peloton for a heck of a long time.
The least favorite is the Mortirolo in Italy or the Madeleine in France, because in my position at the team, my job was to race full gas more or less from the start, have my climbers on my wheel, then I race all the way through the valley, either in the Giro, Mortirolo for Ivan Basso, or for the Schleck brothers in the Tour to the Madeleine or Mortirolo. So I go full gas, and as a good teammate, I hand off my last fresh, clean water bottle to my leader. So I be there completely exhausted, no drinks, no water, and my climbers just trying to unfold their magic, and I am completely naked, no water, no food left, and I still have to make the time cut. So I hated these two climbs because they told me every time, Jens, your finish line is on the bottom of the climb. Just deliver the Schleck brothers or Ivan Basso. So I had never had an easy day on these climbs. Best climb probably was, simply because I had a good performance, the Tourmalet, where we put the basic work down for Carlos Sastre later to win the Tour de France. And I happened to have a really good day, could do some good performance on the Tourmalet in the Pyrenees. So that would be my favorite climb. But talking about Pyrenees, Matthew, what type of climb you think you prefer? The steady and a little more longer climbs in the Alps, or the little shorter, punchier climbs in the Pyrenees, or you like it when they go up in stairs, you can catch your breath a little in the middle? What type of climb do you prefer?
Probably the longer climbs in general. I actually don't like when they go up in steps and you can catch your breath. I'd rather it just look like there's no respite, and I don't know, I feel like that demoralizes people a bit more. But the short, I mean, I don't like the super punchy climbs. I mean, anything over 5 minutes is okay. Under 5 minutes, I don't know. It's too short for me, I think.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that you've grown up with Mount Lemmon in your backyard there in Tucson. I mean, that is, to me, the coolest, most iconic climb that I've ever done, because you start at 3,000 feet and you go up to 8,500, something like that. But is there any climb that you've ridden over in Europe that you could compare to Mount Lemmon?
I don't think so. Yeah, like you said, I can't believe I didn't say that Mount Lemmon was my favorite climb. I was thinking in Europe, it's like you said, it's a weird one because it's maybe 5%, but it's 5% for 26 miles or whatever, 45 kilometers. Yeah, and you go, like you said, from 700 meters to, I think at the top it's 2,700. So you go through like different whatever you call different climates, different like biomes. As you go up, you start like in the desert, and I don't think there's anything in Sierra Nevada. I'd say like that climb, whatever the main climb is that takes you from Granada up to Sierra Nevada, is the closest thing that I've done that I can compare to Lemon. But yeah, I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that is like 3 degrees Celsius, maybe 95 Fahrenheit at 2,000 meters. I don't think there's anywhere else that you can get that type of those conditions.
So now we talked about your climbing and the Giro. Where do you think you have the biggest potential of becoming better or stronger in training or in nutrition, dropping more weight or better equipment, making your TT position better? No, I'm just asking, where do you think you could go? I actually think I could go better and be doing this and this. I could improve. Well, where do you see your future there?
I think the biggest thing for me is being a bit more economical in the Peloton, and just getting to the climbs, having spent less energy trying to move up, trying to fight for position. I think the last year, the thing I've improved most on, maybe, and I mean I still need to get better at it, is just kind of being more of a, I don't know how to say it, but a bit more a bit more aggressive in the Peloton and just a bit more assertive. I think, I don't know, a lot of people say now, like the neo-pros come into the sport and just have no respect for the more experienced guys. And for me, I feel like it's a bit different. Like I don't want to be in the way almost, like on some of these sprint stages, or it's hard for me to fight for position towards the front when I know like I'm not going to be sprinting. I'm just going to be in the way. So this year I've gotten better at and it's come a bit more with gaining confidence from getting results on the harder stages, like that I deserve to be there. And it's more of a switch, like especially the sprint stages, it's still the same. Like I'm not going to get in the way of the sprinters, but it's more the climbing stages before the climbs. Now it's like, all right, I know I can finish well on this stage, and it's more just putting yourself in position and not, saying in your, this is my wheel, like I know I can finish well on the stage, and go behind me. Don't go in front of me. And so it's more making that switch. In the past, I think I was more passive, and I'd let more guys in front of me than I should, just because I wasn't confident in my own ability. And so now, with a bit more confidence, you kind of, I still, like I said, I still need to work on it, but it's, I think that's the place where I can improve the most, and what will in the future help me the most in improving.
Well, if the interview after Matej Mohoric won his stage in the Tour de France gives you any consolation, even someone like him, as he said, quote unquote, that sometimes you feel like you just don't belong here. So I think that's a very normal feeling. You mentioned confidence. I think that's super important to your development. But, earlier when we started the podcast, you mentioned that you wanted to ride for top 10, top 5 GC, which these days normally means that you have to be a dominant rider in the time trial event. And your physique, I would say, Jens was like, do you need to lose some weight? Obviously, that's not the case. Maybe you need to gain some weight. But what do you think you can do to improve your time trialing to get it to that level where you can not inhibit your productivity uphill, but also maintain or increase your overall GC position in Grand Tours with the time trial?
Yeah, I think as a junior and U23 even, I was I don't know how, but surprisingly I was pretty good in all time trials, even the dead flat ones. I mean, as a junior, I won the national championships time trial, which was a dead pretty much dead flat out and back. Time trial, the same Valley of the Sun. So I've felt like I've always, relatively speaking, for my size, and I've been pretty good at time trialing, and it's something I really enjoy, and I actually really enjoy riding the time trial bike. Well, one, I think I'm young, but I'm also pretty young still physically. I think I have a lot of hopefully a lot more like muscle to gain, and like you said, I think for me, I think the biggest, it's harder to keep the weight on and hard training blocks than to lose it. So I think as I get older, maybe put on a bit more muscle mass, that'll help in the time trials. But also, I think the biggest thing I can focus on now is just making sure my position is really, really good. I think the smaller you are, the more your coefficient of drag matters. And so, yeah, making sure that my position is really, really good, and making sure that we have time trial equipment that's on par with all the other top teams, and then riding the bike, which for me is not a I mean, I like I said, I enjoy riding the time trial bike. So yeah, just doing all those things, and then hoping to develop a bit in the next couple of years and put on a bit more muscle, and then yeah, we'll be there hopefully.
A follow-up question on that one. Now that we talk about time trialing, you had any chance yet to go to wind tunnel, or you do some testing on a cycling track with different positions, and then you try to find the best possible position on your bike? Or how did you find your position you're using right now?
I went to a wind tunnel as a junior, actually, when I was with Lux, and a junior team in the US, and I remember working on my position here in Tucson, and just feeling like, okay, yeah, this feels fast. I think this is good. And went to the wind tunnel, and it was like, I think it was like I had the lowest coefficient of drag that wind tunnel had ever seen, and it kind of was like, and so they didn't change anything. So it was confirmation that what my position was good. And so, yeah, and then I went to the wind tunnel again, and this year, or I guess the end of 2022, before this year, in Europe, and worked a bit again on my position. But it's the sport, like, if you're not, I mean, my CDA was good as a junior, and you constantly need to keep making adjustments and making improvements, because everybody else is, or if you're not, you're getting slower relative to everybody else. So you just have to stay on top of it, almost like it. And yeah, you can't just go to the wind tunnel once and be set for the rest of your career. So,
well, you've had some pretty good influencers in your life. Obviously, your dad, Jimmy, was one of the best triathletes in the world for decades. You were on Lux as a junior. You came through the Hagen Berman Axeon team, and now you're on Israel Premier Tech. I mean, that's a pretty good kind of progression. But, you know, the top level of the sport, and I know you're quite young, but I would love to hear from you, from your eyes, being 21 years old, being a little timid. Are there any concerns that you have in the sport? And if so, would you like to talk about that? I don't know what it could be, safety, length of the season, whatever, but you know, we have our ideas on that. But I was just curious if there's anything that stands out in your mind that you would like to see added, deleted, or changed before the end of your career.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a tough question. I think it's hard to say, like, the sport needs to improve on a safety from a safety perspective, because I think a lot of that is just due to is the riders. I think everybody is at a higher level now, and I think there are a lot more guys that can win bike races. And so, because of this, the finishes, the stages, there's a lot more fighting that goes on. It's every day is more of a fight. It's not like, because of that, there maybe are more crashes, there's more stress, I think. I don't know That's what it seems like. I wasn't. I've only been a professional. I'm a neo-pro, so I don't know exactly what it was like before I was in the sport. But it just seems like every race now, there's a lot more guys who go to the race to win, and so that creates more stress, and that stress is what causes a lot more of the crashes and what makes it look less safe. I don't think that means that the governing bodies and the race organizers, there's nothing to do to improve safety. I think it means they need to do more to improve the safety just because of that. And as far as what they can do, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe I need a bit more experience of racing and to be able to really comment on that. Yeah, I mean, anything they do to try and improve rider safety, I'll get behind, I think.
When we talked, you told us that you believe being more asserted or being a little more confident would help you in the future to get the position you need before a climb. Here is what your sport director, Sam Bewley, said about you. I'm just reading it for you. He is just a great bike rider. His physical abilities are so good that he will be able to do some pretty good results in the not too distant future on some big mountains. So I believe that should give you some confidence, right? Because he saw your development. He was at the races with you. So there you go. There's your confidence boost, my friend. You're all good to go now, no?
Yeah, no, it's been having Sam as a director this year is like, oh man, it was really cool. I mean, he did a few races, Catalunya he did, and I was there, and then the Giro, and I think it's his first year directing, and he does a really good job, I think, and it's the riders all really appreciate that he's only 1 year out of racing, and so he can really relate to what we're going through, and it's easier to listen to someone who you feel like is really gets what's going on, and I'm really glad he's part of the team.
Well, I have another question about this being your neo-pro season, because everybody's a neo-pro at one time, but everyone also has one of those fanboy moments, that pinch yourself moment. Have you had anything like that, either, I don't know, in a race situation or meeting someone that you always looked up to that has been like, man, I'm here with these guys now?
Yeah, I think the first time was actually, I was a stagiaire with Israel Premier Tech in Vuelta Burgos in 2022, and I remember like going up, I think the climb was Picon Blanco or something like that it was called, and guys were getting dropped, and I was there, and all of a sudden I was behind Nibali, on Nibali's wheel, and that was because you're so focused in these races that it's kind of hard to have those like moments where you pinch yourself and it feels surreal just because you're so focused and in the moment. But that I went Nibali. I just remember distinctly, like Nibali was in front of me, and I was like, whoa, like, you know, I'd been watching him since before I even started cycling, and the tour was always on in the summer, and he's always someone that I really like to watch just because of the way he raced. And behind him on a climb, that was probably one of the only moments, surprisingly, that like I really it felt a bit surreal. Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of, like, even this year in the Giro, like being in a peloton with guys like Roglic and Geraint Thomas, it's cool, but at the same time, for me, it's hard to have those moments, just, yeah, like I said, because you're always so focused and trying to, if you're so focused on racing that you don't find too much time in the races to think about that. But
talking races, what actually is your program looking like for the second half of the season? And do you have an eye on next year's Olympics, or you go, nah, that's not for me?
With the Olympics, I mean, if USA Cycling asked me to do the Olympics, I'd say yes. I'd love But I think in Paris, I think the course probably does not suit me perfectly. We have guys that are better suited to that course than me. Again, like if I had the opportunity, of course I'd go. But maybe in 2028, I think it's in LA, and I think that course might be a bit better suited to me. Plus, it's in the US, so I think that might be a better objective. And then the rest of the year, I do Tour de l'Avenir actually at the end of August. Then some of I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm pretty sure those Italian one days towards the end of the year. So l'Avenir, I think, is the big one for me. And then I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to do it this. I mean, just because of the whole like professional riders kind of going down and doing l'Avenir. But yeah, I started it last year, but got the flu halfway through and wasn't able to finish. So I feel like I haven't really had a clean run at it, and so yeah, looking forward to that one this year.
That's awesome that you say that. That's always a race that's kind of stood out in my mind. I never got to do it, but I love watching you guys, you young guys do that. But Matthew, listen, we wish you all the best, not only for the rest of the season and the Tour of Avenir, but your future there at Israel Premier Tech. I think you've signed there until 2025. So it's going to be a nice little run watching your progression. Get some sleep and see you on the road sometime soon. If not, we're going to see you. Both Jens and I are going to be there for the L Tour of Tucson. So hopefully you're around and we can, now that you're 21, we can probably take you out for a beer.
Yeah, I should be there. I always like jumping in that when I'm here. So looking forward to it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Huge thanks to Matthew Riccitello for being our guest.
Thanks for listening, and please give us a 5-star review and share us with your friends.
The show was a Bello production in association with Shock Giraffe. The producer was Mark Payne, and this episode was edited by Kurt Warner.
Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bobby and Jens, and share your cycling stories with us. Matthew mentioned that he was a little starstruck riding on the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. Have you ever been starstruck at a bike race? Let us know please by messaging us at Bobby and Jens.